All right, welcome to episode 4 of the For My Dogs podcast. This is a podcast that exists to talk about what it's like to be a man in today's world and to highlight how we can't do it alone. So if you've been listening with us over the past couple episodes, just want to say thank you. We're super humbled by how many people have reached out and just shared how needed this topic is. And you guys have just shared stories with us of your own mental health stories and how you were struggling and you found a way through it. And some of you just shared that you're struggling right now. And so we appreciate that vulnerability and that honesty. That's exactly why we started this podcast. So just want to say a huge thank you to those of you who've reached out. And if you're out there, maybe you wanted to reach out, but you didn't know how, you are more than welcome at any time. If you feel like you just need someone to talk to about where you're at and what you're struggling with, or if you have a story that you think's powerful about your struggles and how you've overcome mental health challenges, feel free to DM us on Instagram or TikTok. And you can also email us. So we created a For My Dogs email. It's For My Dogs, DAWGS 24 at gmail.com. So you can shoot us an email or you can reach out to us on social media. And we would love to hear even more stories than we already have. But we're super humbled and grateful for those of you who have shared already. Yeah, Johnny, this is episode 4, man. It's crazy.
Fourth quarter, baby.
Yeah.
Let's put my hand up, and going for it.
That's right. Four's up. But yeah, man, I've been loving this. This has been great. It's been super fun. I know. And yeah, just hearing people's stories is just awesome.
Honestly, like you and I did this for the purpose to help guys out, and I never would have thought how many people would have been reaching out already, and we're only on episode 4.
Yeah.
And I am honored to be a part of these people's journeys now. I am humbled that they have reached out to us, and I'm so grateful. And so we're not saying that in a prideful way at all. We're just saying that, like, I mean, we've had just a few guys reach out, and if that's all it is, then it's totally worth it. We can end it right now. It'd be totally worth it. Yeah. But I believe that there's still more guys out there, and that's what we're here for, is to help the dogs out.
That's right. Yeah. And so, with that, we are happy if this, our podcast so far touched one person, then it's worth it. But because of the response we've had, we feel like this is a needed message and a needed topic in our time. And so what would really help get the word out to people that may need to hear it is if you've been listening and you're enjoying this content, just please subscribe to our podcast, follow our podcast, and leave us a review, leave us a rating. That'll really help get this out to more and more guys, more men who may need to hear the kind of stuff that we're chatting about on here. We got together recently. We got some big plans for the rest of this season. Going to have some guests on. It's going to be really cool. We're going to do one episode on the road, which I'm intrigued to see how that'll go.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah. So got some big plans. So just help us out by getting the word out. Share, the podcast on your social media if you feel so inclined. But just, leave us a rating and review. It's really helpful for us. So Johnny, I do want to open up with, I heard a rumor. Okay.
Oh gosh.
I heard a rumor that there's some Georgia players who really like the color orange.
What are you talking about?
Well,
Who said? Oh boy.
I heard you've had like 4 players arrested in the past month.
Oh my gosh.
They're really drawn to the color orange in that jumpsuit.
Not gonna lie, I thought it was like Claire said "Go Vols" or something, and I was about to be livid.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the first time she's done that before.
Oh, and she embarrasses me in public by doing that. But what was it you that sent me the top 10 SEC rivals?
Oh yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
and it had like, I mean, it had everybody, and then it said Georgia Bulldogs versus Clark County PD. And I was
Yep.
like,
Yep.
oh, that's always been a thing. I mean, the
Yep.
boys, if they're going to wear orange, that's the only orange that they're going to wear. But yes, that is true.
I don't know, like, and it's so funny because so many. Well, one of them was really bad, like really bad. I don't know
Yeah,
if you
like
heard about that one.
recently or few or
Yeah, it's within like the past couple months. Like I think it happened over summer.
oh, okay,
But
yeah,
then
yeah,
the vast majority of them for you guys are driving,
yeah.
like speeding, and
Yeah,
it's been that way for years. And I'm like,
yeah.
can Kirby not figure out how to keep these players from speeding on the highway?
Well, it was a thing when Mark Rick was a coach too.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. It even goes
It
back
was,
to that.
yeah, I mean, because I remember going to bowl games as a kid, and players couldn't play because they were arrested or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And Carson Beck in February, he bought a Lamborghini or something,
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
which that is just a whole nother mess. That love Carson Beck, but
yeah.
gosh, and
Gotta
his
have the
response
NIL.
was, yeah, his response was, I love fast cars. I was like, I get it,
Of
man, but
course,
you're in
he
college and you're
he
buying a
plays for
Lambo.
Georgia.
I, I know.
He plays for Georgia. He's got to like fast cars.
That is that is like, oh, NIL. I love it and hate it. But yeah, no, I know. I'm a Georgia
Yeah,
fan. I know the whole thing. It comes with it. It
yeah,
comes with the trade. That's
it
funny.
does. It does. Yeah. So big news happened too recently with the Vols. So not only
I
Georgia
hope you don't
players
say what I
growing
think
more
you're gonna say.
fond of orange, but recruits are growing more fond of orange.
I knew
And
you were
me and
gonna
Johnny have already had this conversation, but big 5-star tackle committed to Tennessee recently, David Sanders Jr. out of Providence Day, which is actually right here in our backyard.
say. Mm-hmm.
They just played a game at Panther Stadium recently. But he committed to the Vols, and then we had another 4-star cornerback, and then we flipped a 4-star linebacker that was committed to Alabama that now is committed to the Vols. So you better watch out, Johnny. We're
All I'm saying,
coming.
I said this before, and Texas A&M has preached the same message, and they had the worst season when they had the best recruiting. So
Yeah,
just be
but
careful. Be careful with the chanting.
I'm just saying that's bad coaching.
Yeah,
Heupel's proven he's a good coach, so
we'll see.
we should be all right. But
Well, only one way to find out on this.
yep, only one way to find out. Just wait till those recruiting classes start coming in.
Mm-hmm. But
Um,
being committed with the NIL is unfortunately does not hold a lot right now.
yeah, that is true. I mean, until National Signing Day, people can flip. So
So many times.
yeah. But speaking of recruits, we have to kick off the today's show. We wanted to talk about some recruits that have come into the two different programs, and they have grinded. They've put in the work, and we think these players. Johnny's going to give 2 for Georgia. I'm going to give 2 for the Vols. These players are going to be our certified dogs for this upcoming football season. So the cream of the crop for each team. So how about, the people love offense, they love scoring points. So how about you give us your offensive player, your offensive dog for Georgia this year?
So I just want to apologize up front that I totally misread the question. Um, I didn't know you meant recruits. I just thought you meant
No, no,
who.
no, no, no. I'm saying
Oh,
these,
okay.
these recruits have been in the program and
Oh, okay, okay, okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
I
yeah.
was like,
They've
oh crap.
developed into like
Oh, okay.
the best players on the team.
Okay, fine.
I was just trying to segue, Johnny.
I got you. I got you. Good segue, and I apologize
Thank
for
you.
just ruining it. Okay, so my all-time dog, as Pat McAfee would say,
Mm-hmm.
has to be our QB, Carson Beck. I I think that he's a sleeper, especially last year he was a sleeper. But after like reviewing last season, I mean the dude had under 4,000 yards and he has 72% completion rate, right? He didn't impress me in the beginning. He does not run the ball a ton, but he does throw it a lot, and he's very safe. And at first I was kind of like annoyed by that, and then after I saw the pattern and kind of zoomed out, I was like, no, this dude's a team player, and he's actually in it to win. And his numbers show, and right now he's already in the Heisman running for that. And the dude has sat there in the backfield watching for a while. Like, he didn't come out swinging as his like starting freshman, right? Love the guy to death. And Carson Beck, if you ever listen to this, you're not the prettiest guy in the world, but you can definitely throw the ball. Okay.
Now he's not
So
going to listen to it, Johnny. You
I
just
know. I'm sorry.
insulted the guy.
I'm sorry. You can make fun of me and I will gladly take it, Carson Beck. But I say that to say is I really do think that he'll be a dog for this year, because I think that his focus, unlike our last quarterback, his focus is all about himself. I think this guy, I mean, just with what his stats show from last year, I mean, I think he had like I think he had 25, 24 touchdowns last year. I mean, the dude is an animal, but you
Mhm.
don't really see it as much because he's so focused on the team himself. He's not focusing on himself, he's focusing on the team. And so I think he's going to be incredible this year, and maybe he'll be our next Heisman.
Yeah. I mean, he's no Hendon Hooker, but yeah,
Easy.
sure, he's all right.
Yeah, he doesn't have Bush's baked beans can like
Right.
Hooker had, right? I'm
Right.
sorry for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we'll see. We'll see. Maybe we can get a green bean can or something.
Yeah, maybe you can get the Jolly Green Giant to sponsor
Jolly
him.
Green Giant.
Um all right. So my dog for Tennessee's offense this year, you're not going to be surprised by this at all. And I went back and forth a little bit because it is his first year as like the bona fide starter. He's
Listen,
he's taken over the keys to the car for the first time, really. But I do think it's going to be Nico. He's our, was a 5-star quarterback in the last recruiting cycle. Sat behind Joe Milton last year. Came in the bowl game against Iowa. Looked really sharp. Took care of the football. Used his legs. Had 2 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns. He has the deepest wide receiver room we've had since Heupel's been there. Deepest tight end room we've had since Heupel's been there. Most experienced offensive line since Heupel's been there. Um, and the running back room is new, but Dylan Sampson's back, and he had a lot of production last year. So I just think Nico has the tools and the situation to really have a good year and live up to his nicknames of Polynesian Pistol and the Samoan Slinger.
yeah. Well, I mean, the dude has a lot of hype with him, and he only played one game, and it
I
was a
know.
bowl game. And I'm so like I'm not throwing the towel in with him. I'm like 50-50 with him, because I'm like, okay, he only played one game, so let's like be easy. But also
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, he only played one game and there's already this much hype. So like I'm torn with it right now
Mm-hmm.
on how he's gonna play, because again,
Yeah.
he's only played one game. But he did
Yeah.
amazing in that one game.
Yeah. And we both picked quarterbacks, which it annoys me to pick a quarterback because I feel
Yes,
like they just get all the attention and all the
for
credit.
sure.
And I was an offensive lineman when I played, and so offensive linemen just do the dirty work and don't care if they ever get praised for it. And you were an offensive lineman too, so you get it.
Oh yeah.
But when I was looking at our team, I was like, there's so many weapons that I don't think one of them is going to emerge as like just this completely dominant player. Like, I think we have so many, we can spread the ball around. And so I do think all the attention and credit will come back to Nico, which is great. And Heupel, I mean, he's got a proven track record with QBs. So I trust Heupel. I trust that offense and the system to put Nico in the best position to succeed. Um, and Heupel was, I think he was on Marty and McGee recently, and he was talking about how in his offense, he just allows the quarterback to be the artist. He makes sure they have a good understanding of the system and what they're trying to do on offense, and then they have a lot of decision making responsibility actually in game, and that's what Hooker was so good at. And all I've heard about Nico since he got to Tennessee is how hardworking he is and how good he is between the ears on the mental side of the game. And so I think he's going to be a dog for Tennessee this year.
I mean, take it as Hooker and my father-in-law, if you're hearing this, no offense, but Hooker
Yeah.
was at VT,
Yeah.
and VT fans were not pleased with him.
Oh, yeah, they
He
hated him.
then goes to Tennessee, and he gets all the praise. And that simply, I think, is coaching.
Yeah.
And now VT has a new coach in there, so and he's doing pretty good. VT might win the ACC championship. We'll see.
Hey,
Uh,
Pat picked him
I
on game
know,
day.
and I know that Dan is super excited about that.
Mhm.
But with that saying, is that coaching is a determination for Hooker, and we'll see if it is for Nico.
Yep. Yep. Now, what'll make it easier for Nico is I think this is I'm thinking this is going to be the best defense since Heupel came on and hired Tim Banks to be our defensive coordinator. And it's because I feel so good about it, mainly because of one guy who's going to be my dog on defensive or on the defensive side of the ball for Tennessee. If you're listening to this and you know anything about Tennessee, you're not going to be surprised at all. But James Pierce Jr., he's actually a North Carolina boy too. He is absolutely incredible. If you've never watched him play, just go look at his highlight tape. And I mean, this guy's going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft next year. Could even be top 5 if he has the season that I'm thinking he's gonna have. Just so quick off the ball, uses leverage so well. There was a clip from I don't remember what I think it was when we played Austin Austin Pay. I don't know, some small school in Tennessee. He literally just like bull rushed the tackle, put him on his butt, and sacked the quarterback. Like literally, like picked him up and sat him down. And he just and in the bowl game against Iowa, he had a pick six. I mean, incredible athlete. And there's so much around him this year too on the defensive line that I think teams are going to have a really hard time keying in on him and double teaming him and because they're going to have so many other guys to deal with. So James Pierce Jr. going to be an absolute dog for Tennessee's defense this year.
Now, who would be more of a dog? Your defensive player or your offensive player?
I think James Pierce, yeah,
That's what I think
I
too.
think he's by far the best player on Tennessee's roster this year.
Yeah.
Yep.
And for me, I like so I had my defensive player, and then I didn't know if you want to do offense. That's why I picked Carson Beck. But my defensive player, I think, is like the biggest dog in the nation right now. Like,
Mm.
obviously, I'm biased, but Malachi Starks, he's a DB for Georgia.
Yeah, he's good.
He's amazing, and he's amazing. Like he started his freshman year with a 2022 team, like, and that was Georgia's like best defense in a long time. That's when you had like Jalen Carter at like massive defensive tackle,
Yep.
and then all those guys became the Philly Dogs. I don't know
Yep.
if you like recall that, and he was a part of that team as a starting freshman, and now I think he's a junior now, and that dude, I mean, he had like under like 60 tackles last year. He is a hoss, and I think that he is going to lead our team. I think he's going to be a phenomenal leader for like on the defense, and he is going to continue to be a dog this year. And like without him, like I think that our defense would struggle. And I think our defense is not as hyped as it used to be, like in 2022.
Hmm.
But I think he is like that really loose string that's like holding it together.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he is. He's really good. I think. I mean, you guys have a really good defensive backfield.
We're
You're
gaining it back again.
yeah. You're still going to be strong in the trenches, which always helps DBs.
Yeah.
Um. So yeah, I think that's a pretty solid pick.
Yeah, for sure. And I I said a very loose string that would hold it together. That makes no sense. He is the last straw that's going to hold it together.
Yeah. Yeah.
I caught myself on that one.
That's good. Good catch.
Yeah,
Good
thank you.
catch. Um. Well, yeah. So how about you just kind of tell us what we're going to be covering today. Tell the people what we're going to be talking about on the podcast today.
Yeah, so episode 3 was about healthy habits. We're talking, this is a mental health podcast, and we're going through different levels of that because, there's a ton of levels with mental health. So I think it just makes more sense after we talk about the healthy habits to then talk about the negative habits. That's what episode 4 is going to be about. Some negative habits that occur after or during mental health. I want to give like just two disclaimers up front before I even dive into it. One, I want to give a disclaimer that if it's like for a trigger warning, if anybody here is going through these habits, maybe it's a negative habit and a word might trigger you to fall into that temptation, or it might have some kind of negative effect on you. I still highly recommend you listen to this podcast because I think what we're going to say is very helpful. However, I just wanted to let listeners be aware of that. And two, with these things is that, again, reiterating this, that Tucker and I, we agree that medicine with mental health is important and needed.
Mm-hmm.
However, Tucker and I are not familiar enough with the medicine that it comes. We are doing a lot of research and we hope to be talking about that later on. I just want to give a disclaimer that we still prioritize that. So if you're a listener and you use that, I think that's amazing. I think that's amazing that you're going with that for help. However, Tucker and I are not do not have enough knowledge on that. So that won't be a focus on today's episode. But with today, I want to talk about a song real quick before we even dive into that.
Nice.
The Red Clay Strays. And if you have not listened, yes, if you've not listened to them, highly recommend that you do listen to them. And Red Clay Strays, if you're listening to this, please come on the show. We would love to have you.
Yeah, that would be incredible.
That would be amazing. But they have a song called "The Devil in My Ear," and I have just been like jamming out to this song, and I want to read some lines from there. So in the song, it says, let me go to it. All right, it says depression and anxiety. I can't shake the grip that they got on me. I know the devil's gotten in my brain. I try to push them all away, but those thoughts, they stick around, thriving on my pain, and they keep bringing me down. I pray to God for peace of mind, but for the gloom for them to disappear. I can't find a cause to live with the devil in my ear. That's just heavy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I told Tucker that I wanted to paint a picture before we started this, and I know I'm talking a lot, and I'm about to preach even more right now. But I know I'm ready for it. Get ready. So when you're struggling with anxiety and depression, this song paints a really good picture, and I want to explain it. So what happens a lot is that the devil is going to come into your ear, and he is going to encourage you to fall into a temptation. Now, the temptation that I have does not necessarily mean the temptation Tucker's going to have. We're all born into sin, and we're going to all have different things that we struggle with. So it's going to be the variety is very large. But he's going to be tempting you with that sort of temptation, encouraging you, telling you it's good for you. And then after you fall into it, after the feeling has gone away, that same devil is going to come back in your ear, and he is going to make fun of you, and he's going to tell you, I cannot believe that you just fell into that. Look how worthless you are. Look how weak you are for falling into that. So then you're going to spiral out, and you're going to start feeling anxious because you just fell into it. And you might get depressed because you're like, you know what? He's right. I am worthless. I am weak. And then that same devil is going to come back in your ear, and he's going to tell you, hey, I know how you're feeling right now. I have a way for you to not feel that way. Why don't you do this temptation? And that cycle is going to repeat and repeat and repeat. And so if you're listening to this, I think you're in two categories. I think you either are right now, you have had that cycle before, and by the Lord's grace, you have broken free from that. However, that does not mean that you can't go back into that. Or you're in the second category, is that hopefully you are in that cycle right now, but you've never realized that. And now that I have explicitly explained it, you realize, oh, that's me right now. And hopefully through this podcast, you learn how to break out of it. And so that's what we're going to be talking about, is those negative effects through the cycle that the devil and the temptation can have with these mental health issues. It's heavy, man. I have felt those cycles before. I don't know about you, Tucker, but it is a cycle back and forth.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's times you're doing these things and you keep you keep going back to it over and over again, even though you know it's not
Oh
good for
yeah.
you and you know how it makes you feel. And yet you keep going back to it over and over again. And you're like, why on earth can I not?
It's a
Why do I
cycle.
keep doing this? And
Yeah.
I think it's important, whether we've been pretty open. Johnny and I are Christian. We follow Jesus. We think that Jesus lays out what it means to truly be human and to
Mhm.
be um, here as his creation on this earth, and we think he makes the most sense of that. But just going through that cycle, whether you're a Christian or not, it can be somewhat easy to say like there's something else going on that's a part of this whole process. That's because you get to a place where you're like, I don't want to be doing this. Why do I keep doing the things I hate and that I know are bad for me? Like addiction can make you feel like you're powerless, and it can make you feel like there's something else going on, or there's some power that's contributing to it. So yeah, I think that's a great way to set things up. Um, and yeah, as Johnny said, we'll run through a lot of these just common coping mechanisms that people have with when they're struggling with mental health. Um, but we'll also give some methods of combating those things as well at the end. So just know we will get there eventually.
So
Um,
stay tuned for the whole episode.
yeah, stay locked in. Yeah, Johnny, you wanna kick us off?
Yeah, I will. And just reiterating all that. So I'm not by any ways, and Tucker's not either, by saying that temptation causes anxiety and depression, but these are just the effects that they can with this cycle. And going back to music, I was on the phone with my buddy recently, and we were talking about music. And I am a huge fan of country music as well as Tucker is. I'm not bashing country music at all, and I will definitely continue to listen to country music after this episode. However, you need to be aware of some of the songs because, as my buddy and I were talking, and he is struggling with some alcohol issues, is that he's like, man, drinking. I've been drinking a little bit, and I've been sad, but I've been thinking it's okay because I'm listening to these songs, and some of the country songs are like, I was sad, so I got drunk.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, like, there's a lot of songs like that. There's a lot of good
Yeah.
songs.
Good old David Allen Coe.
David Allen Coe. I
I
mean, you
was
talk
drunk
about,
the day my
yeah.
mom got out of prison.
I mean, we could have a whole podcast just listing songs that are like that.
Yep. Yep.
And so like it's modernized, it's popular, it's a normal thing to do in society, and especially in country music as well, is to, hey man, if you're sad, then let's just get drunk. However, let me pause real quick before we start forming an opinion. I'm not by any means saying that alcohol is always wrong, right? I'm saying when you medicate with alcohol,
Yep.
having
Yep.
one or two beers is totally fine. In the Bible, it does not say do not drink. It says do not get drunk. It says drunkenness. So there is a clear difference. And if you're using alcohol to medicate, if you're using that as your form of coping, then that is wrong, and you're never going to find um, help from that because you will constantly be having to go through bottle after bottle after bottle because the alcohol does not last long. It is going to it will probably give you a great feeling during it, but then it will eventually wear off and you will be stuck in those feelings that you've had before. And the only way to get rid of those feelings, get rid of the feeling of depression or anxiety, is to go back to that bottle. And so then there's that cycle that I was saying earlier. And so, again, I'm not saying alcohol is wrong, but for my buddy who had that issue, when him and I used to hang out, we would have a couple of beers. Now he's saying I can't drink anymore because he knows that he can't just have one or two because he knows that he will fall into that temptation. So he knows that he cannot control himself, and so now he has just taken alcohol out of his life, and I'm proud of him, and I think he is a man for doing that, for owning up to his actions, and for realizing that, hey, you know what? I can't keep doing this, and I'm so proud of him for doing that. However, I'm not going to say like I still will have a beer.
Hmm.
I'm not saying that I am going to medicate with alcohol though. And that's the issue with it, is that people use that, and unfortunately, that's how society makes it seem like. And so the all I'm saying is don't do that, because you're going to have to keep finding more bottles and more bottles to find a way out of it, and you're never going to find help from that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've just always found it interesting. I mean, our culture, especially our generation, Johnny, like the social thing to do is to drink alcohol. Go to a brewery, go meet up at but yeah. I mean, just that's what people do. That's the social
Right.
places to hang out, all involve alcohol. But I think
And
it's
and
no.
and I love doing that. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
it's
it's fun.
fun.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a good time. But for people that where this is like a real struggle, that can be really difficult.
Right.
Um, and I think mm, we need to be careful with just being able to hang out and have fun without it.
Right.
I think our generation kind of has struggled, or we've kind of lost that ability a little bit. It just feels like we always have to have that in whatever we're doing. And I've always found this funny, but I think yes, there is a difference between having a couple drinks and being drunk. And I think it's no mistake that your body will let you know when you've had too much to drink. And it's called a hangover for a reason, because you feel awful the next day and you got a headache and I mean, your body is letting you know, hey, something's not right. Something's not right. And you may have had a lot of fun. You may have numbed out whatever emotions you were feeling. You may have just put all your worries and troubles on the back burner and just went out and had a good time. But you're going to feel the consequences of that the next day. All you're doing is delaying it. You're not healing from it. You're not getting rid of it. You're just delaying it.
That's
And it's
good.
going to catch up with you.
You're right. Yeah. You are delaying it. That's a great way to explain that, is because the feelings are not, that's not a magical eraser that will erase those
mhm.
feelings. Because like I said, as soon as the alcohol goes away from your bloodstream and you're back into your normal self, you've now delayed the process, and now you're having to deal with it the next day.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, it's not that alcohol is all bad, and I think Johnny did good of saying that, but there's a line. There's a
Oh
line.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, if you're using it to medicate or you're trying to use it as a coping strategy, that's when it's not good for you. It becomes an unhealthy habit, like what we're talking about.
And I think Christians and non-Christians can agree on that.
Yeah.
I don't
Mm-hmm.
think that's yes, it does talk about that in the Bible, but I don't think that's a Christian thing across the board. I think a
Mm-hmm.
non-Christian would also say, if he had a buddy who was using it as a coping strategy or to medicate, he would think that that buddy should stop too.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, and I think, you're showing support for your friend by when y'all hang out, like you won't drink either because
Right, exactly.
you're gonna support him and be there for your dog, which is
Yeah.
that's needed too. Um, yeah, I think alcohol is a popular one because, like we said, our generation, that's like just a huge part of our social culture. Um, but one that's not unique to our generation that I think is also a huge struggle would be pornography. And I've seen so much growing awareness and things out there on social media about how bad pornography is for you. But there for a while, it wasn't viewed that way. Like that I feel like Christians were always like viewed as anti pornography, even though a lot of people in the church viewed it and were even addicted to it. Um, but it was just kind of a hush hush, like we don't talk about it. We know it's bad, that type of thing. But I think you're even seeing the secular world and Christian world both together ringing the alarm bell saying this is not good for our society. And there's studies that show what it does to your brain. There's studies that show um, just how there's not restrictions on like ages on these sites that are you have like sex trafficking being involved. There's been a lot of stuff that's come out about that in recent years. But I still think because we have computers in our pockets and it's easier now than ever before to access pornography, that and social media sites are getting ridiculous these days with what they allow on there. Um, that this is still one of the biggest struggles for men in our society. I would venture to say. You may disagree, but
No, I don't disagree at all. I think there's research that shows that I think that porn sites make more money than the NFL. I, I read up on that
mm-hmm,
based off of the subscriptions that they have. When I at the previous jobs that I've had that were a little more blue collar, and there was, I mean, it was just like the talk, guys would talk about it, and I hated it when guys would do that. But I have seen close friends of mine from like college and from high school that now that they're married, that it's ruined their marriage, and because they don't think it's a big deal until it comes out to the light, and it is a big deal because I think that I don't think that guys, I think that it's so normalized,
mm-hmm,
like getting drunk when you're sad, and people don't realize it's a big deal until it's taken over their entire life, and
mm-hmm.
it's so sad to watch that fall. And it's not something that just like, it's not going to something that happens like one time. It's like it's going to be a gradual decline, and unfortunately some people don't wait until it's too late.
Yeah. And I want to be clear too. And I don't want to, I won't speak on your behalf, Johnny, but I'm not immune to this, either of these first two. Like
Right.
these, both of those have been struggles at a time in my life. I'm not going to sit here and act like, oh, I just have rose above it my whole life. Like, no. And my wife knows about it. We've had conversations about it. And it it truly does. It has an impact on your relationships. Like there's no doubt about it. And um it's it when you actually look at what it does to your brain and what it does to your psyche, you will realize how harmful it actually is for you. So there's, I mean, Fight the New Drug is an organization that's on
They're
the
not
front end of a
Christian.
lot of this. They're just a nonprofit. But they are kind of on the front end of highlighting a lot of this stuff. And there's other people out there, but um, this one this one literally is when guys will tell you why they do it. They're like, "Oh, I just needed an escape. Like I just needed to go do something mindless or whatever." Or, I read this quote from Viktor Frankl, who wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning, and it's all about like finding purpose and how that is so important for us as men and or as humans really. And in it he has this quote where he says when a man lacks meaning, he will distract himself with pleasure. And
Mm.
so this could mean a number of different things. That could be
Yeah.
drinking too much, it could be pornography, it could be
Eating.
social
Yeah.
media, it could be, yeah, a number of different things. But I think if you're someone listening to this and you find yourself constantly going to pornography and you still find yourself depressed, you still find yourself anxious, you could just be distracting yourself from truly discovering what your purpose is and why you were put on this earth. And when we don't have things to do that we're working towards, and we're not setting goals, and we're just sitting on our hands, that's when all these unhealthy habits pop up. And pornography is one of those.
Well, it's back to that spider web thing. Is it? That's not that
Yeah.
what you're seeing is a spider web. What the actual issue? Like what? Like why are you searching for that? And that would be
Mm-hmm.
the spider,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think, yeah, for the whole pleasure thing, it's more than just those two. And I would like for drinking and pornography, and I would just want to don't feel like we're you are bad to like listener. Like if we're pointing like the cliche thing, if we're pointing one finger back like at you, we're pointing three fingers back at ourselves, like
Mm-hmm.
and I think for a lot of Christians too, I want to talk, specifically to the Christian audience is when I was talking about drinking, you might have been like, oh, well, I don't do that. Right.
Yeah.
Like I don't struggle with that. Well, I just want to, take the plank out of our own eye first, is that when you look in Deuteronomy, Proverbs, Galatians, Second Timothy, a lot of places in the Bible, when it talks about drunkenness, it also says gluttony, or it says drunkards and gluttons. These words are side by side in the Bible a lot of times for a reason, because they're just as bad. And if you are using if you're struggling with mental health and your escape for pleasure is food, that is if you're overeating in a way, and you're maybe being lazy in a way, and you're sitting on your butt on the couch and you're not doing anything, right? Now, why am I not doing anything? Well, mosquitoes only come to water that's standing still, right? So not doing anything is also bad. So I don't. That's what just want to say is the whole thing about like be careful if you're judging other people, and that's like Gandhi said it. He said, I love your God, I hate your Christians. So Christians, be careful with this because this is a huge thing that makes people turn away from the faith. And so gluttony and laziness can are also bad, right? Sin is sin across the Bible. Now, I also want to give a disclaimer too is that with food, there's two categories. There's overeating and there's undereating with the eating disorder. I think both are eating disorders. And am not, I'm not ever going to tell someone you should stop eating because, you have people who struggle with an eating disorder, and I don't want to cause someone to stumble, and I don't want to cause someone to dig a deeper hole into that. With both of the issues, I think that a lot of it is with social media. I'm not saying that's a full thing, but a lot of it is with social media. In social media, people post their best selves, right? You're not going to see someone post having a bad day today. They're going to post themselves looking the best. They're going to post themselves looking the best life. And that's going to result either into you eating less to make yourself look like that person, or eating more because you feel sorry for yourself. And food should never be your avenue for pleasure in that way. You should not use that way because both are negative effects on that. And I'm trying to tread lightly on here because I know how much of a trigger warning this can be, and I know how big of an impact this can lead on someone's life. All I'm saying is that either way, don't use that source for pleasure. You are worth way more than that, and there are different avenues that you can use for that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's undeniable that social media is it is a tool for adults. They were created and they were called social networking sites. And I think that's what they're good for, is the ability to network, connect with new people. It can be great for business. It can be great for a lot of things. However, it can easily become something you turn to when you want to avoid your struggles. You want to avoid, you're feeling anxious. Well, I'm just going to go do something mindless. I'm going to scroll on social media. And then you see a post of someone you often compare yourself to. And you're like, why am I not that way? Why don't I have this? Why don't I have that? And then you just get even more anxious. Or you see something on social media that reminds you of something you have to do this week, and that makes you anxious. Or just the constant comparison to other people or to other things um, can lead to, yeah, you feeling depressed and you feeling down because you don't feel like you have enough. You feel
Yeah.
like you need more. And or it could be you're on social media as a dude, and the way these things are put together, the algorithms, they throw something in front of you that's going to tempt you to go onto a pornography website. You go watch porn, and then you feel shame and you feel depression because you just did that. And you don't want to do that. I mean, it can have detrimental effects And what we have to realize is when we go on social media sites, we are not choosing what we give our attention to. These big tech companies are putting stuff in our path and trying to put stuff on our feeds that will hold our attention on that screen for as long as possible so we see the most amount of ads, because that's how they make money. They don't care about your well-being. They don't care about your mental health. They care about their bottom line and making money. And again, I want to reiterate, I'm not saying social media is all bad. It has given people a lot of opportunities. It is a tool, and it can be used to give people a new career, a new purpose. A lot of people are doing a lot of good things on social media, but there is no denying when you look at the data that it has contributed to the mental health crisis we are seeing in our world today. I'm reading two books, Coddling the American Mind and Anxious Generation. This is the number 2 and number 3 book on Men's Health magazines for mental health. And both of them are written by the same guy. But the gist of it is he goes and shows that Gen Z is the first generation that's like they're becoming, slowly becoming young adults. And they were the first generation to grow up and have smartphones from like adolescence all the way through puberty and on past that. And so like when you're going through puberty, your frontal lobe is not fully developed yet. So your ability to have self-control isn't fully developed. And so what he points out is like in 2012, when the smartphone came out, from then on, you look at the spikes in anxiety and depression in young men, young women, it went through the roof, and it's directly correlated with the invention of social media. And it's for all the reasons we're talking about. But these things are designed to hold your attention, and they're choosing what you're giving your attention to. And we've said before on this podcast, what you give your attention to is who you're going to become. So they're choosing what they're putting in front of you, and there's no denying with the data. What it's doing is it's making us more anxious and more depressed. That's what they're choosing to allow us to become. And until we figure out some ways to put some boundaries and to protect our kids from things like that, we're still going to have those struggles. Even in my own personal life, I found that to be true. Like I had to put up boundaries. I had to take breaks from social media, fast from social media, and just try and limit my use of social media as much as possible, because I know I'm a lot better off when I do. I use it as a tool, but I also have boundaries in place to protect me from the bad side of it.
Well, heck, I mean, we use it for our podcast,
Exactly. Yep.
right? We have Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, and TikTok and Instagram. So
Mm-hmm.
we're all over social media. So it can be used for a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think you need to go to your settings app and put a time limit on there, or screen time. And so you're not on it 24/7, right?
Yep.
When you are on it, like our page on Instagram, but
Yeah.
but I still think that you should limit yourself. And that is even if you don't have a struggle at all with anything,
Mm-hmm.
you should be doing something else besides that.
Yeah.
Right. So just the only reason why you should have social media is to like our page on Instagram, and
That's right.
then everything else you should not even have a use for it.
That's right. And I mean, look, my wife has found so many great recipes on TikTok that we benefit from
Oh
all
yeah.
the time. So I really don't want to sound like some old boomer who's coming on here and just saying social media is the worst, get rid of all of it.
It's the devil. Foosball's the devil.
But the our attention span, we're like less than a goldfish now on being able to hold our attention, which that's just embarrassing.
It's so bad.
And it's because of social media and the constant notifications, the constant um, dopamine hit we get from scrolling on social media, or somebody liking our post, or somebody commenting, or somebody views our video. Like all of those things are dopamine hits. And that's what makes us addicted to it and makes us spend far more time than we need to. I think in that book, he said the average teen now spends anywhere from 50 to 60 hours a week on their screens, whether it's
That's
social media
that's
or
awful.
watching, streaming something. I mean, that's most people breaking their back at a 9 to 5, working 50, 60 hours a week. They're spending that on their phones, which is just, you can only
Insane.
imagine what the outcome of that's going to be.
Yeah, not good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think with social media, it's created this like hustle culture because originally when all of these technological advances started happening, I forget who it was that said it, but they made this like famous prediction of like, oh, eventually like humans are only going to work 4 hours a day because we're going to have all this stuff that's going to save so much time. What happened instead, because of how greedy we are and how we just constantly have this desire for more and we don't have contentment and we don't feel like we have enough, instead of using these tools to limit how much we're working, we just said, well, all this is going to do is make us even more productive. And so we continued to work the same hours plus some more because it just made us easier to do more and make more money with those tools. So we did the opposite. And so another thing I think that people can turn to when they're struggling with mental health issues, we've talked about alcohol, we talked about pornography, we talked about social media, gluttony, laziness. Um, uh, I think that's all the ones we've hit so far.
Yeah.
But one that I think is more sneaky that most people don't view as a bad thing um, is just constantly being busy. You constantly have something going on, or you give so much attention to work and you become a workaholic because you're trying to escape what you're feeling and what you're dealing with by just doing more stuff. And I plugged the Ruthless Elimination of Hurry book on a previous podcast by John Mark Comer. He shares a quote from John Ortberg, which says that hurry or busyness is a form of violence on the soul. We were not created to live this hurried, busy life. We need time to slow down and to reflect on what's going on. What are we feeling? What is causing us to feel this way? Because again, Johnny, I love your analogies. Like that mosquito one other earlier made me chuckle just because you always,
That was pretty good, wasn't it?
it was pretty good. You come
I
up
thought
with some
I
great
thought of that this
analogies.
morning while I was drinking coffee, and I just like typed it on my notes. It's like I gotta use that for later.
That's awesome. But going back to the cobweb, analogy, like a lot of times we're too busy to even think about, well, what could be the spider? What could be the source of this? What's the root of why I'm feeling this way or why I'm struggling with X? Um, I just think we need to find ways to slow ourselves down, to put a regulator on the engine to say, we're not going to live like the rest of the world wants us to live. We're not going to let, in football, you'll say, we play at our pace. As an offense, you want to play at your pace. You don't want to let the other team speed you up or slow you down.
Yeah,
You want to dictate the pace of play.
yeah.
And for most of us, we're allowing tech companies, the pressure of society, our culture to dictate the pace of our life, and it's destroying our soul. And the correlation, again, just like social media, between how busy we are and the anxiety and depression rates, it's obvious that those things are linked.
Well, allow me to be vulnerable with you real quick, and I've already shared this with you, but I want to share this
Mm-hmm.
with our podcast. How long have we been doing this podcast for? You think since a month now? Like just you and I
Yeah,
with the work.
I think a month,
Okay.
around a month.
And we started in the summertime.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a teacher, like I said in the very beginning of this, like episode one. And I had to confess to you when we hung out last week
Mm-hmm.
because in high school, I would cut 7 yards every other week. And in college, I had 3 jobs while I was a full-time student. This is my worst thing that I do. I never thought it was a bad thing, you know? And until this summer, I realized how bad it was because this was my first time I've had this much time off since high school. And my anxiety went through the roof because I thought that I was not doing enough. I thought that I was not supporting my wife enough. I thought that I was not being a man enough because I was at home, you know? And man, I had so much anxiety with that. And I would just spiral out. And did I tell you once, Tucker? No, I didn't. And we're doing this podcast and I still withheld that. It wasn't until we were planning, the
Mm-hmm.
next couple of episodes, I said, all right, we gotta stop. I gotta tell you that I've been feeling anxious and I'm sorry for not telling you. And so yeah, it still happens to
Yeah.
me right now. And
Yeah.
it is one of the worst things because people think, oh well, if you're not doing anything, you're not man enough, you know? But no, like you need that for your soul.
Yeah. And look, God created the earth in 6 days, and on the seventh day he rested. God rested. And do we think we're better than God and don't need
Right.
rest? Like,
Right.
not that God needed it, but like that's the way he set the rhythm of the world. And rest is one of the healthy habits we talked about. Like
Right.
you have to have time to slow down and think. And if you're constantly berated with notifications, with social media, with email, with text messages, with phone calls because of your job, like you're never going to have the space to think about why you're anxious. Why
Mhm.
are you feeling depressed? What is at the root of that? You're never going to have the time or space to deal with that. And all of these things are just hurrying you up and making you spiral out. And another piece to that is we live in a very materialistic society here in America where everyone's got the next, not everyone, but you feel the pressure to have the newest iPhone, the newest um, headphones, whatever. You want the,
Shoes, car, house,
yeah, you feel like you got
everything.
to have the 3 bedroom house. And I remember Haley and I struggled with this right when we got married. We felt like we needed a house right away because everyone's like, oh, you got to own a house. You got to own a house. That's, part of building wealth. That's part of like, whatever. And I just felt this pressure and like it was making us really anxious. And finally we were like, you know what? But we can do this on our own pace. We don't need to feel this pressure to just jump into something we're not ready for. And so, um, you know, I just feel like in our culture, there's all this pressure of you don't have enough. You need the next best thing. Like you just need to keep accumulating more stuff. I read a quote in one of those, I think it was Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. He said, every, we could fit every human in America in 1 square foot of space in the storage units that exist.
Oh gosh.
Meaning, think about that.
That's pretty insane.
We have so much stuff that we buy storage units to fit the stuff that we don't use
That will never use.
or just to keep it for in case we need it one day. And I just think that also has a detrimental effect on the soul. Is if you
Mhm.
can't sit back and just say, I have enough. I have a wife that loves me. I have a roof over my head. I have clothes on my body. I have good friends that I can talk to. You know, gratitude we talked about as a healthy habit in that episode. This is the opposite of that. Discontentment. Discontentment is the enemy of gratitude, and discontentment will leave you feeling depressed and anxious, feeling like you don't have enough. And I'm not sitting here saying I enjoy going shopping, believe it or not. I'm a dude, but my parents are always about finding deals. I think they passed that down to me. I love going to a Marshalls and just finding like some Nike shirt that's really nice and being like, "Oh, this is only $12. What a steal." And my wife gets on me about it, but um I just think like we need to take a serious look in the mirror and say, at what point is any of it going to be enough?
Right.
At what point are we going to be satisfied? Because I mean, the wealthiest people in the world, still feel like they don't have enough. Think about that. They still feel like there's something else. And so, all these things we've talked about are not bad when they're done in moderation. Well, not all of them. Sorry, let me take that back. Let me take that back.
Oh no, I think yeah.
Alcohol, good in moderation. Food, good in moderation. Social media, good in moderation. Um, Scheduling things and putting things on your calendar, good to a point. Uh, Buying things, good to a point, good in moderation. Pornography, I don't think there's any benefit to, whether it's in
Well,
moderation or
I'm not saying pornography is good, but like sex with your wife.
yes, yeah,
Yes.
yes. Sex is good.
Right.
Yes,
Is pornography is when it has been distorted.
yes, yeah, yep. So yeah, and I know, Johnny, you wanted to highlight just kind of how do we combat these things? How do we be there for our dogs when it comes to this stuff?
Yeah, Tucker and I, when we were kind of meeting about this episode, I was like, should we break down each one of these, how you fight off? And then we are like, you know what? Like, there's not a cookie cutter way for everybody. However, I think Tucker and I can agree that there is one solid plan that can at least start the wheels turning, and that's accountability partners. Accountability partners, you need that's what it means when you have a dog in your life, is you need a buddy who's going to be there. And there's a lot of things that come with this though. Number one, I think you can have somebody who is in a different state, who maybe it was your like college roommate or a guy you grew up with. That's fine. He does not need to be your main one. You need to have someone that's in your life daily because, if I text my college roommate, if he's my accountability partner, my college roommate, he lives nowhere near me right now. And I can lie to him. I can say, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm good. Just texting him. But if someone's in your life, it's hard to lie in person. And you need someone to say, hey, man, I'm struggling with this. Can you check on me on these times? Can you call me these times? And when they ask you how you're doing, and if you lie to them, you're not hurting them at all. You're only hurting yourself. Accountability partner starts with truth. You have to be honest with him. And you have to be like, no, I actually did fall. And that accountability partner, you don't, you need to welcome them in and show them loving, right? So that they feel like they can come to you. But accountability partners need to be hard on each other too, because they don't want you to stay in that valley. They want to take you up to that mountain, and so they needed to push you. Hey, man, let's get harder on these boundaries that you have in your life. So if you're someone that have an accountability partner, you need to be truthful. And if someone is using you as your accountability partner, you need to be loving and show grace. But grace has a backbone, and you need to be not like hard on them where you're like yelling at them, but you need to be enough to where like you need to encourage them to come out of it.
Yeah, don't just sweep it under the rug and be like, oh, it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Don't be like, oh
Yeah,
no, it's fine. Like be loving, like, man, I'm sorry that you're dealing with that. But okay, let's get more serious in this now.
yeah, yeah. Because you know what's at stake. You know
Right.
what's on the other side
Right.
and what it's doing to them. So it's a loving thing to press a little bit and to try and get them to see it.
No,
Yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, this goes back to episode 1, right? We talked about this was a huge reason why we started this podcast. If you're not honest about what you're going through or willing to talk about your struggles, your falling, your shortcomings, your failures, then you're preventing healing from taking place. That is where healing takes place. So having someone, um, a close friend that can hold you accountable, that you can be honest with, is how you can combat a lot of these issues. Um, and I actually came across a story of I was watching Marty and McGee. They're like a SEC show, and Steve Sarkisian was on there, and they were interviewing him. And for those of you that don't know, Steve Sarkisian's head coach for the Texas Longhorns, and he was the head coach at USC, and he got fired because of alcohol-related issues. It was affecting his job and how he was showing up day in and day out, and he got fired. And Nick Saban kind of took him under his wing and gave him a second chance and kind of rehabilitated him back into the coaching world. So he was on Saban's staff for 2 years. And then he got the chance to be at Texas, and they were asking him about his vulnerable style of leadership, which I had never heard that term before, but I just loved it. Like, man, if we could just all be vulnerable leaders, I think you people would be willing to follow that. But they're asking him about that, and he was saying how each season he tells his players at some point during the year his whole story. He doesn't hold anything back. He tells them everything. And he was just talking about the trust that builds among their team, and it gives them the freedom to talk about things that they struggle with, and it gives them hope. It lets them know, like, just because you're struggling with this thing now, you can come out of that and you can be better for it, which we've talked about on this podcast. Your struggles can turn into victory, can turn into strength. And so, we've talked about a lot of things that can be hard for a lot of people, but just know, even if you're struggling with one of those right now, there's light at the end of the tunnel. There's hope. You can
And
get to the other side.
yeah, and don't think that you're this noble guy for holding this shame. Shame's not noble to hold. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I'm not saying that take what you're doing lightly and be like, oh no, it's fine. But don't take on it like, oh man, I'm struggling with this, but I need to be feeling the weight of shame because I just fell into that. Yes, you need to feel the weight of it so that you know not to do it again. But I heard a pastor say one time, is walk in repentance, not shame.
Mm-hmm.
Because shame, like I said in the beginning of that cycle, shame is how the enemy will keep you in that cycle because he'll make you believe. Because I'm reading a book called To Be a Man, and in the book they said that unattended shame will change your behavior or will lead your behavior. And so if you just keep shame in the closet or if you keep shame on your back, like on your backpack, it will make you focus onto that. So if you're saying, "Oh man, I am feeling shame for getting drunk every time I'm sad," well, you're always focusing on that getting drunk, and if you are looking at that and focusing on that, you're going to direct yourself to do it again. So, yes, share your story. Yes, encourage another brother, but don't sit there and pity, thinking I need to hold on to this shame. No, walk in repentance. Do not walk in shame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and since you shared a lyric earlier, we'll finish this out with a good old Zach Bryan lyric.
Oh, let's
Okay,
hear
me
it.
and you both love Zach Bryan.
Oh, I love them.
He has a song called "East Side of Sorrow," and it's about him losing his mom to cancer. And in that song, in the chorus, he says, "The sun's gonna rise tomorrow somewhere on the east side of sorrow.
Love it.
Don't give it a reason to follow. Just let it be and let it go." And I love that lyric. Um,
That's amazing.
and so just know, if you're struggling with any of these things, there's hope for you. And again, if you are struggling and you need someone to talk to, reach out to us on Instagram, TikTok. Just look up For My Dogs _UTUGA. Or you can email us at formydogs24@gmail.com. I'll put these up on the screen. But yeah, if you are enjoying these podcasts, please go rate, review, subscribe, follow, all of the things, and share it with people. Share it on your social media so we can get the word out so that men that need to hear this will hear it. And thank you guys for listening. Go be a dog today.
And go be there for your dogs.